How can I make sense of the else clause of Python loops? Many Python programmers are probably unaware that the syntax of while loops and for loops includes an optional else column clause. The body of the else clause is a good place for certain kinds of cleanup actions, and is executed on normal termination of the loop, i.e., exiting the loop with return or break skips the else clause, exiting after a continue executes it. I know this only because I just looked it up, yet again, because I can never remember when the else clause is executed. Always. On failure of the loop, as the name suggests. On regular termination? Even if the loop is exited with return? I can never be entirely sure without looking it up. I blame my persisting uncertainty on the choice of keyword. I find else incredibly unmnemonic for this semantics. My question is not why is this keyword used for this purpose, which I would probably vote to close, though only after reading the answers and comments, but how can I think about the else keyword so that its semantics make sense, and I can therefore remember it? I'm sure there was a fair amount of discussion about this, and I can imagine that the choice was made for consistency with the try statement's else column clause, which I also have to look up, and with the goal of not adding to the list of Python's reserved words. Perhaps the reasons for choosing else will clarify its function and make it more memorable, but I'm after connecting name to function, not after historical explanation per se. The answers to this question, which my question was briefly closed as a duplicate of, contain a lot of interesting backstory. My question has a different focus, how to connect the specific semantics of else with the keyword choice, but I feel there should be a link to this question somewhere.
An if statement runs its else clause if its condition evaluates to false. Identically, a while loop runs the else clause if its condition evaluates to false. This rule matches the behavior you described. In normal execution, the while loop repeatedly runs until the condition evaluates to false, and therefore naturally exiting the loop runs the else clause. When you execute a break statement, you exit out of the loop without evaluating the condition, so the condition cannot evaluate to false and you never run the else clause. When you execute a continue statement, you evaluate the condition again, and do exactly what you normally would at the beginning of a loop iteration. So, if the condition is true, you keep looping, but if it is false you run the else clause. Other methods of exiting the loop, such as return, do not evaluate the condition and therefore do not run the else clause. For loops behave the same way. Just consider the condition as true if the iterator has more elements, or false otherwise.
Better to think of it this way: the else block will always be executed if everything goes right in the preceding for block such that it reaches exhaustion. Right in this context will mean no exception, no break, no return. Any statement that hijacks control from for will cause the else block to be bypassed. A common use case is found when searching for an item in an iterable, for which the search is either called off when the item is found or a not found flag is raised/printed via the following else block. A continue does not hijack control from for, so control will proceed to the else after the for is exhausted.
When does an if execute an else? When its condition is false. It is exactly the same for the while/else. So you can think of while/else as just an if that keeps running its true condition until it evaluates false. A break doesn't change that. It just jumps out of the containing loop with no evaluation. The else is only executed if evaluating the if/while condition is false. The for is similar, except its false condition is exhausting its iterator. Continue and break don't execute else. That isn't their function. The break exits the containing loop. The continue goes back to the top of the containing loop, where the loop condition is evaluated. It is the act of evaluating if/while to false, or for has no more items, that executes else and no other way.